Hi everyone, I'm Lisa, and today I'm going to show you how to make one of my favorite recipes from my very own kitchen, chocolate babka. So for those of you who don't know what a babka is, it's kind of a traditional Jewish or Eastern European sweet bread. It's sweet, it's rolled up with either nuts or cinnamon, all sorts of fillings, but my personal favorite is chocolate with a little bit of orange zest. So the first step of making the babka is to kind of form the foundation of your dough. So you're going to start with 2 cups of flour, some sugar, your orange zest, that's about 2 tablespoons or about the zest of 1 large orange, some salt, and instant yeast. You want to use instant here and not just regular active yeast. And just give that a quick whisk together. Then you're going to add in your cold butter cubed. Then you're going to cut that in with a pastry blender. And you're also going to add a little bit of water here, and it'll get a little bit sticky. And your dough's just about ready when your butter is about pea size, just like that. And you're going to take your mixture and add it to the bowl of a stand mixer. You're going to fit that with a paddle attachment. And you're going to add 3 eggs and 1 egg yolk. Just give that a quick whisk. Get your mixer going just on low. And you're going to add your eggs and your flour, just alternating a little bit. You don't want that big poof of flour. So we'll start with a couple eggs. A little bit of flour. And just let your mixer do all the work. And it should start coming together a little bit. And so you should be just about done when the dough starts to kind of creep up the side of the edge of the bowl and onto the paddle. And then you're gonna remove this off. You're gonna turn it out and knead it. So just give your work surface just a little bit of sprinkling of flour just to start with. You don't want to dry out the dough too much. Just turn it out. Like I said, this dough should be fairly sticky, so don't worry about that. Just going to give it a good knead for about 7 to 8 minutes. And if you feel that the dough is sticking too much, you can just add a little bit more flour to your bench and just keep working. And to knead, you just kind of push the dough away from you with the heel of your hand and fold it back in on itself. Kind of give it a quarter turn every once in a while. The point of this is to develop the gluten in the bread. All right, so after about 7 or 8 minutes, you should be done kneading. Don't worry about over kneading your bread. You are going to tire yourself out way before you'll ever over knead it. But when it is done, it should be a little bit stretchy. It shouldn't be too sticky. And then you can just pop it in the fridge in a greased bowl and let it proof at least 8 hours. But I say do it overnight. Make it on a Friday night when you come home. Wake up Saturday morning and finish it off. The next step is to make the filling for your babka. Now there are lots of different kinds of fillings. You can make cinnamon, some are made with nuts, but my favorite is chocolate because I think it goes really good with the orange. And to make the filling is pretty simple. You're just gonna melt a stick of butter in a pot with a little bit of chocolate. You can do this in the microwave too, but if you want to do it the real kind of old school, bourgeois or bubby way, you would do it over the stove. All right, you can add in your chocolate chips. I like dark chocolate. And just mix that together until it's nice and melty. It won't take long. And the next step, once that's nice and smooth, is to add in some confectioner's sugar, some cocoa powder just to make it a little more chocolatey, just a pinch of salt, and some cinnamon. And you're just going to mix that together until it's nice and smooth. It comes together really easily. And that pinch of cinnamon is pretty traditional. It kind of gives the chocolate a little bit more flavor, and it goes really well with the orange too. And so while this cools, you're just going to set it aside, and then you're going to roll out your dough while it kind of comes up to room temperature. So it should have proofed about 8 hours or overnight. Don't worry if it doesn't double in size the way most breads do. It's an enriched dough with the sugar and the butter in it, so it doesn't get quite as much lift, but that's all right. So you're going to turn it out onto your bench. It's going to be pretty cold and stiff. So that's exactly what you want because you're going to be handling it a lot. Put that in there. And just while it's still in its round, just divide it in 2 because this makes 2 loaves. If you're going to go through all this trouble, you may as well make 2, right? And then you're going to roll each into about a 10 by 14 or 10 by 12 inch rectangle. You can flour your surface to keep it from sticking. Give it a little press to get it started. You can see all that orange zest in there. It's nice and fragrant. So when you're done rolling, it should be pretty thin, not translucent though. And if you need to do a little bit of a patch job to make it more of a rectangle, that's fine because it's gonna be all rolled up so you won't see any of those seams. We're gonna use half of our filling and spread it thinly, but leave a little bit of room around the edge, about between 1/2 and 1/4 inch. And just do your best to eyeball it. And you can use an offset spatula to kind of get it nice and spread evenly. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The next step is to kind of roll it up the way you would with cinnamon rolls. So start on one of your long edges and just kind of roll it in on itself. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect because you're going to be slicing into this in a second. All right. And when you get to the seam, just kind of pinch it closed with your fingers. It's sticky dough, so it should stick. If you find it's a little dry, you can always use a little bit of water to seal it. While this one is all pinched shut, you're going to want to pop it in the fridge while you work on your second loaf and roll that out and fill it the exact same way. It's going to make it nice and cool and firm for when you slice into it for the next step. This next step is my favorite. It's where you're going to get the kind of the signature babka twist. So after you've let one of your rolls chill in the fridge for a little bit, say about 15 minutes, you're going to slice off the ends, just nice and clean. And next you're going to slice down the middle of your babka, which seems like a shame because you put in all this work getting a perfect spiral, but it's going to be so worth it when you kind of get the braid or the twist done. So just take a very sharp knife and cut right down the middle, clean through it. When you open it up, you're going to start to see those layers that you made, which I think is the coolest part. So from there, these are your 2 halves that you can use to make a rope to make that signature twist. So all you're going to do is just kind of lace these 2 together. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just kind of twist them together until you have a nice braid. Now, it looks just like that. And then you're going to pop it into a loaf pan that's been greased and the bottom's been lined with parchment paper. And you're just going to snuggle it in there to have a second proof. You can kind of adjust it and futz with it a little bit once you've put it in the pan. And then you'll let this proof for about an hour or so at room temperature in a nice warm room, and it should grow in size. Don't expect it to double again, but it should get nice and poofy and ready to go in the oven. Once that's risen, you can pop it into a 375-degree oven for anywhere between 35 to 45 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. So to make the glaze, it's just a basic simple syrup, so it's equal parts water and sugar. Combine that in a pan and give it a stir until the sugar is nice and dissolved and the solution is clear. So the purpose of this glaze is not really to add a lot of flavor to your babka, it's more to give it a nice shine and a really pretty finish on top. And you'll just keep stirring until all that sugar is dissolved and it's kind of reduced a little bit into a little bit more of a syrupy texture, and it's not quite so runny. And you'll just brush this on the top. So after spending about 35 minutes in the oven, this is what your babka will look like. It looks nice and golden on top and the chocolate's kind of spilling out. But to give it that finishing touch, you're going to use that simple syrup glaze and just brush it over the top while it's still in the pan and it's still warm. And I think that just makes it look nice and shiny and kind of gives it that professional finish. Make sure to get in all those crevices. Should look nice and shiny when you're all done, and then just let it hang out in the pan for about another 10 minutes and you can lift it right out.